Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. As always, we're coming to you, as everybody knows, in a time of war. So what I've noticed now is I look at the internet. Not everybody does, but I look at what's going on, and people are now very, very frustrated. And people are from all walks of life, with all opinions. People are speaking very straight and saying things that they perhaps wouldn't have said so clearly a month ago. So that's an indication that we also have to speak more clearly and more directly. And sometimes in Torah Judaism, the sages, the rabbis, are careful not to say too much. But in this time of crisis, I see that people are really taking the chance of saying it more. And so I think that's called for. Okay, so my first point here is I just want to say that, we're learning Kabbalah, we're learning about spirituality, we're learning about the inner aspect of Torah, and it says in the Gemara that the scholars, they learn everything 100 times. And so a lot of the things that we learn, the first time we hear them could sound very wrong or confusing, or we might not even be able to internalize what's being said. And so that's why especially in Kabbalah study, we're learning, we have to hear things over and over again, and it has to somehow start to change the way we're thinking, change our perspective, change our understanding, elevate our consciousness. So I say that, with the bullet points that I'm offering here, a lot of these things need to be learned, and you can write a whole book, and there are many books on each one of these points. And so it's important that we listen to what's being said, and we can discuss it, we can disagree, but this is something that has to really take time for a person to really try to change the way they see the world. The Jews have a mission to attain the full purpose of creation. The Jews have a mission to attain the full purpose of creation. Okay, so this is a sentence that, every single word you can argue with. You say the Jews, why the Jews? And you can say a mission, what's the mission? And you can say attain, what do you mean by attain? And what is the purpose of creation? So this is how difficult it can be, is that we really have to kind of delve into these things to understand what we're talking about. Let's just say, the first point is that the Jews have a mission to attain the full purpose of creation. And later on, another bullet point, we're going to get into some of the things like, what do we mean when we say a Jew? Okay? Everything that I'm saying is from the Baal HaSulam, is from the Hakdamot of the Baal HaSulam. And so I don't have the pages numbers in front of me, but we can certainly look it up in the Hakdamot of the Baal HaSulam. Okay? So we said in the last class that the Jews have a contract. Noah first made a contract with God, and then Abraham made a contract with God. And that means that the Jewish people as a whole, the nation of Israel, can never be destroyed, can never be taken out of this equation for getting to the finish line of Gemar Tikkun, it's called in Kabbalah, which means the purpose of creation, to bring the whole world into balance, unity, love, and awareness of God. So whether or not you agree with it, that's what it says in the Torah. It says that Abraham made a contract with God, and that the Jewish people cannot be destroyed. Okay? So we know that in life we are propelled forward, all of us, all of humanity, we're propelled forward through a process of carrots and sticks. When we do something good, we get a reward, and we do something bad, we get a punishment. Those are maybe archaic terms, reward and punishment, but what we mean is that when we are fulfilling the mission of creation, good things happen, and when we are falling short of the mark, there's a schedule here. There's a 6,000 years of development, of creation, of getting to this point from Adam HaRishon until Mashiach, 6,000 years of development of consciousness, of higher consciousness, of the awareness of God. And so when we fall behind in this process, bad things can happen. And when we move forward, we keep ahead of the curve, when we're proactive, good things happen. And so it's very important for us to understand that. I mean, we all believe that because that's what we teach our children. But then when it comes to this cosmic mission of making the world a better place, it's very easy for us to forget. I'd rather go to the beach, I'd rather be busy with my fancy car. And we forget that there's literally is a pressure being exerted by God on all of creation. It's called Mida Keneged Mida, and reward and punishment. And this means that if we don't move and we don't live up to our responsibilities, we can end up in bad positions, in places of suffering and crisis, okay? And of course, we don't have to point out the obvious that now we are in this point of crisis. So, we've said that we touched on this last class, we talked about this last class, but there is a concept of darkness and double darkness. In Hebrew, it's called Hester Kafel. I'm sorry for my accent, but it's called double darkness, okay? So when the Lubavitch Rebbe says, first people look for God and they can't find God. And that's the first level of darkness. And then it gets even worse and people forget that there's even a God and they don't even look for God anymore. And they start to say, the point of life is, I don't know, there's no point of life. I just might as well have a good time. So when people fall into double darkness, and this is all of us, if we can all have God forbid, the potential to fall into double darkness, that is when we start to be depressed, angry, frustrated, and then what happens is we know from our own lives, we know from children, we know from high school and elementary school, we start to blame other people, then we start to resent them, then we start to hate them, and then we act violently, right? This is this very bad cycle. So, what we have to say here, l'chaim, everybody, Baruch atah Adonai, al-melcham shakol nevaro. What we have to say here is that these are, when you learn Kabbalah, Kabbalah is called the wisdom of emes, the wisdom of truth, which makes you think, well, what's the whole Torah? And so the point is that what it means is that they're going to tell you the truth, even if you don't, the hard truths. They're going to tell it to you straight, even if you're not ready to hear it. So that's why people don't learn Kabbalah, because it tells you exactly the thing. So the first thing we have to say, and this video is going to be seen by Jewish people who are from other nations. It's going to be seen by religious people, by non-religious people. And so here we are telling you some very straight talk, and I think that a lot of people will appreciate it. People who are angry at the Jewish people, according to the Torah, are not completely wrong. That is a very hard thing to wrap your head around. When people look to the Jewish people and say somehow the world, the mission of making the world into a better place is the responsibility of the Jews. Now, whether a person believes that himself, there are many Jewish people who don't believe that. There are many people who are not Jewish who don't believe that. The Torah comes and tells us that is the truth. So, a person has a right to look to the Jewish people, but a person does not have a right to, and maybe the right to have a right is the wrong way to say it. It's not good for a person to then fill themselves with hate and resentment and attack the Jewish people. We just said that the Jewish people are not going to be displaced. Abraham made a covenant with God. And so when a person embraces hate and violence, they really are, that's when they step over a line and they're no longer right about what they're saying. A person has a right to say, I feel that somehow Jerusalem is the center of the world. I feel that somehow the Jewish people are somehow connected to this issues that we have in the world. But we shouldn't give in to hate, okay? So, now, next point. We have 2,000 years ago, the Jews fell into a dormant stage called the Galut or the exile, okay? So everybody but a few people in every generation, we call them the righteous, Sadikim, everybody except for a few people in each generation, fell into the darkness where they themselves do not truly understand what the mission of creation is. They don't understand the purpose. So people in the Galut were doing the exterior of the Torah, many of them, not all of them. There was always a group of people who were doing Kabbalah and understanding the inside of the Torah. But for the majority of the nation, people forgot what the mission is, and they forgot, they lost the desire to complete the mission. And so this was by design, and this is very hard to appreciate, but we go into these, Rav Nachman speaks about it, and it certainly talks about it in Chassidut and in Kabbalah, that you have something called Ratzo Veshuv, coming and going, and the way we develop is we go up, we come closer, and then we fall down, and then we go up, and then we fall down, and this is the cycle. And so we've had a period, a very dormant stage, where people have literally don't even understand, this is all of us, everybody's included in this, don't even understand what the purpose of creation is, and then they don't really have a true desire to actually pursue this mission. So, What's happened next in history is that the Jews, we had the Holocaust in Europe, and then the Jews came back to Israel. Now, Israel is the exterior, the land of Israel, the actual physical land of Israel, is the exterior of everything we're talking about. And we talked about in Kabbalah how everything is really being projected from within us, and that these exterior things that we feel are really projections. But the point is that the Jewish people, the Jewish people have returned to the state, to the country, to the land of Israel. And so that's a fact. Here are the Jewish people now. We have millions of Jews. The majority of the Jewish people from the world now live in Israel. And so this is an indication, all the rabbis say, that we are coming out of the exile and we are approaching the time of Mashiach, where we are going to, by necessity and by desire and through understanding, we're going to enter into higher consciousness. That is what's happening here. Could be, if we don't understand what's going on, it could be very ugly. We can end up in very bad places, and then we have to pull ourselves out. And then, so this is why now it's very important. Now, many of the rabbis, all the rabbis, are talking about how do we explain the inside of the Torah, the spiritual inside of the Torah to people so that they understand what to do. Okay. So whether people, I said this already, but whether or not people appreciate, a lot of things we're saying now would have sounded crazy if I said it, to the average person 30 years ago. But if all you have to do is look on the internet and see that the whole world somehow thinks that the Jewish people are somehow the issue here. I mean, that's undeniable now. Everybody is looking and saying, look, what's up with the Jews? Why do they care about the Jews? You could kill 1 million people anywhere else in the world, but if you kill people in Israel, and every death is a horrible thing, everybody's focused on us. So somehow there is a spiritual DNA that is inside of all of us, every single human being in the world, and somehow people sense that something is up with Jerusalem and something is up with the with the Jewish people. And so that's literally what's happening here. So the rabbis, not a lot of people in the religious community, people who are in yeshiva students and people who study Talmud, they know this, but we'll say to the whole world, when the Jewish people left Europe and came to Israel, and of course they came from all the Arabic countries too. Actually, the majority of the people who came to Israel actually came from Iraq and from Morocco. The people who are against the Jewish people forget to say that. But the truth is that the majority of the people in Israel are actually from Arab countries, not from Europe. But that's a side point that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So the rabbis discussed how are we going to now. We have a unique issue. We have religious people who have been doing the outside of the Torah, and now we have to somehow help them to incorporate the inside. And these two things don't necessarily always go together easily, and that's exactly what we're going to be studying here today. But the rabbis had a conversation. How are we going to teach the people, reintroduce the inner aspect of the Torah to the majority of the people? Obviously, people who were studying Talmud day and night, they understood all these things. But what are we going to do for everybody else? How are we going to explain to them the true purpose of the Torah? And so we have different opinions. So the first thing that happened is Baal Shem Tov came. The Baal Shem Tov, one of our greatest rabbis, the first rabbi of Chassidut, and he had a revelation, meaning that he had an awareness of a new way of explaining things that will be easier to explain to people who already are doing the outside without destroying the frame and making people confused and introducing ideas that might get people to let go of what they're doing already, from confusion or from feeling that now the inside is important and the outside is no longer important. These are all issues that the rabbis were very concerned about. So we had the Baal Shem Tov, and he came up with something called Chassidut, and that was, you have Rav Nachman, and you have the Alter Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You have all of these rabbis who pursued this new language of Chassidut to try to explain to people the inside of the Torah, and it's been greatly effective. I myself am a Chabad Chassid, and so I am very much steeped in the way of learning and understanding these things according to Chassidut. But there were other rabbis, okay? There was the Vilna Gaon. Now, people make a very big mistake. They think that, the Hasidim wanted to embrace the inside of the Torah, and the Litvish, the Vilna Gaon, did not. This is completely misunderstood. Okay, so the Vilna Gaon is, I will get into it more, but the Vilna Gaon believed that his disciples could understand enough from the outside to glean the inside, and they just continued to learn the revealed Torah, the Talmud, they had enough of a grounding that they would be able to, they already had an awareness of what the inner meaning was of the Torah, and therefore that was a good way for his students to continue. So everybody was trying to continue and get to this place, and all these great rabbis understood that the Jews are going back to Israel, which is an indication that the world is coming into a new phase where the people are going to demand higher consciousness, unity, and people are going to need the wisdom that's inside the Torah, and they're just discussing different ways of getting there, okay? And then we have, what we're learning today is the Kabbalah as explained by the Ari HaKodesh and Rav Yehuda Ashlag. And Rav Yehuda Ashlag believed that a certain segment of the population needs to hear the straight Kabbalah, needs to hear the unadulterated, straight talk of, and actually engage in the study of Kabbalah, okay? So that's what we have, that's the landscape, okay? So let's move on. Okay, so now that the Jewish people are back in Israel, there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the world for us to do something. Now, people don't necessarily know what they want us to do. Some people just want us to go away, and some people, right? And some people want us to rebuild the temple. People are, don't know. But this comes from a spiritually genetic place where they feel this. And so the way that this works according to Kabbalah is that the Jewish people have to unite first amongst themselves. Now this itself sounds funny. Why shouldn't we all, the whole world, unite, okay? And so we see that when you have a smaller group of people, you see this in politics, if you have people who come together and they generally have the same beliefs, and they generally have the same lifestyle, and they basically have the same, morality, they can compromise and they can do the work. But once the group gets too big, you see that it becomes very difficult. So if somebody wants you dead, you can't start doing the work of uniting above your ego. So what the Torah has done is that, we went through this last class, is you had Adam Arishon and Chava, then we had Noach, and then we had Abraham, and then we had the 12 tribes, and then we had the giving of the Torah, and then we had Moshe Rabbeinu and the giving of the Torah, and each one of these cycles of going up and going down, we included more and more people. So the Har Sinai was the first time that a nation got together under this method of trying to unite above their egos and come into balance with everything. So you see that the method is for us to find, even today, find a small group of people who agree with your derech. Some people want to learn Gemara, some people want to learn Chabad Hasidus, some people want to learn Breslov Hasidus, some people want to learn Ashlag Kabbalah. So you have to get together with a group of people and find people who have as much desire as you do, hopefully more, to do this work. And from there, when you have a success and people see, wow, I went to this place and everybody's really getting along. And when people see that, they want to join and they want to do it for themselves. So this is the proper way for us to move forward, not to say, there's no differences between everybody and everybody should just be together. It's not easy for a communist to agree with a capitalist, and it's not easy for a liberal person to agree with a conservative person. So what the Torah tells you is to try to find, that's why in Torah Judaism, we have hundreds of different synagogues, and each one of them is slightly different than the other one. This is because we're trying to do this method, and we need a baseline of agreement in order to do this work, which is that I want to try to love you and take care of you, and you want to try to love me and take care of me. So if we don't have that as a fundamental beginning point, we can't work with people. So that's exactly why the Torah tells us that the Jewish people need to unite in the land of Israel, and that means that we have, as our top of our frame, we have a one single unified God. And at the very bottom of our frame, we have every single person in creation, not only every person, but all of creation, all the plants, all of the land, everything should come into balance. And so we're not against anybody else's methodology, but what we're saying, what the Jewish people are saying, and anybody who says the same thing agrees with us, is that we're trying to define reality. And so what we're saying is that at the very, very top of what is knowable is this one unified, loving source, God, who is above creation and inside of creation. If you believe that that's not true, if you believe there's 10 different gods, then we disagree with you. We think that there's a higher point than that. And if somebody else believes that only people who are in this religion are going to be saved. We don't agree with that. We're not fighting with you. We're just saying that what our Torah tells us is that everybody and everything has to ultimately come into this unification and to this loving balance. And so everybody and anybody is invited to join into that mission. But if you want to ask somebody, why should the Jews be in Jerusalem and not somebody else, that is something for a person to contemplate and to think about. So who do you want in Jerusalem? Who do you want to be holding the keys to the door of the mission of creation? And so more on that. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but we'll talk about it more. Okay, you'll see that as we go forward, we'll have more clarity on this. Okay, so now we're moving on to a short list of pointers that I made that I hope will help people who are already doing the exterior of the Torah, already thinking in terms of the revealed Torah, to try to help them to incorporate the inner aspects. Not that people aren't doing it, people are doing it, but I want to go through some different points of Torah and try to clarify what the inner aspect of these things mean, and then it can help people who are already in the Orthodox or the religious community hopefully have more tools in their toolbox to do the inner work of Torah, okay? There's many things that they say in the Talmud, and they say in spirituality that sounds beautiful and you're willing to repeat it, but to really internalize it and to believe that it's true is a lot of work, okay? So one of the things they say is that everything happens because of the Jews. It says that right in the Talmud, and the people don't like it. It says everything that's happening in the world happens because of the Jews. So we already went through that, okay? The only thing now that we have to clarify is what we mean when we say a Jewish person, okay? Because everybody says, oh, that means me. I'm Jewish, you're not Jewish, so everything is for me. That is the way an egoistic person hears those words, and that is the opposite of what the sages are telling you. That's why it takes so many thousands of years for us to develop until our ears can hear the truth of what is being said there, okay? Let's keep going. According to Kabbalah, the Jew within each of us, and perhaps the word Jew is hard word to use, but let's just keep using that word. The Jew within us is a person who is working towards the goal of creation, okay? In Kabbalah, we don't worry if somebody is Jewish on the outside. We worry if we are being Jewish on the inside. And so your focus changes from the outside to the inside. And so if a person says, I'm Jewish, you're not, and that's not what a person does when they start doing the spiritual work. They look inside and they say, I'm not living up to my own potential. I am not being who I'm supposed to be. And so what is that, okay? There are people, so the point here is that there are people around the world. Now this is another hard pill to swallow. If a person is doing the exterior of the Torah and they're buying a very expensive lulav and esrog and they're putting up a sukkah and they are keeping kosher and they're keeping Shabbos, but when they go into their inner world, to their desires, they're thinking about their car, they're thinking about their making a lot of money and being popular. This is not, it means that their exterior is Jewish, but their interior is not being very Jewish. And so, before people get alarmed here, there are people around the world who are Muslims and who are Christians, secular, who are awake and awakening to the purpose of creation. Now, the Jewish people were dispersed around the entire world. And so we have been, if anybody takes a genetic test today, they'll find out that some part of their, they have some certain amount of Jewish blood inside of them. It's just a fact. Almost the majority of the people on the earth have been intermarried with the Jewish people. And so there are people who are working towards the goal of creation. And so we don't have to worry about whether or not they're from the Jewish nation or they're from another nation. What we have to worry about is whether or not a person is awakened to the goal of creation. And so this is something much more valuable to worry about. And so I would argue that if people are busy with the exteriors of life, saying you're this and I'm that, you're a Chabad person and I'm a Breslov person, this is a very bad place to worry about, to be busy with. This is actually, in Kabbalah, this is called the branch. This is not called the root. This is called what we see manifest in the world is already what is happened on the spiritual levels. It's a projection of everything that's inside of us. And so if you are a person who's busy fighting about anything, you're busy with the divisions and you're not busy with the unifications. And that's something that in a spiritual level, a person has to make a shift within them. And so I hope that's clear. Okay, we have something called a righteous person in Torah Judaism, and when people say what is a Sadic, a person will say it means righteous. And so in Kabbalah, they have a very different explanation of what it means to be righteous. Then if we ask a person, what is a righteous person? A person who doesn't break the law and somebody who behaves properly, right? That's a righteous person. But in Kabbalah, they have a finer point. And so a Sadic, actually, your Sephardi, the letter Sadi is actually called Sadic by the Sephardim. So it's actually a nun with a yud on top of it. I won't go into the letters because we have a big audience here. But the point is that a Sadic is somebody who realizes that the entire world is happening within them and they take responsibility for everything that's happening. So an average person, we look out at the world and we say, this person's doing something bad and that person's doing something bad, and that's how we get through our day. But a Sadic doesn't do that. A Sadic is aware that the only place that truly exists is within themselves. And the only place where they can actually make a fundamental, a root change to the world is by changing themselves. Now, each person is given a certain amount of, let's call it evil, things that are wrong with them, things that they don't do right. Each person is given, and the Torah tells us that that's not really anybody else's business. Some person has a very big hard time with the way they speak, and other people have a hard time in business, and other people have a hard time. This is what God gave you to work on. It's called your field. This is your field. Everybody gets a portion of the land of Israel. So you get a portion of Israel that has a lot of rocks, and you have one that floods too easily, and you have a field that's too high in the mountains, and so there's not enough air, right? So these are just what God gave you, the piece of this process that is in your domain. And so the only place to really fix and to actually do this work is inside. So according to Kabbalah, a righteous person is a person who sees the entire world as just a reflection of what they need to change in themselves. It's hard to get to that place in consciousness where we actually go through our day that way, but that's exactly what the Kabbalists are telling us, is that that's the true reality, is that there is nothing that you can do outside. The Baal Shem Tov came and said clearly that, when you point at somebody else, you're really pointing at yourself, right? So this is something that demands a spiritual awakening, to realize that you are watching a movie that's projected from within you. It doesn't mean that if you see somebody doing some horrible murder, that you're doing a horrible murder. It doesn't mean that. It means that you should look inside yourself and find out what is wrong, what you're doing that's selfish, and start to understand that there's a method written down by the sages how we can actually come out of that, come out of Egypt and rise above our own selfishness, our own egoism, our own the blinders that we all have on. Okay?
You're saying Am Israel is a microcosmos of everybody else. Actually, we have tools to deal with it, but we actually suffer, and we can perceive God as everybody else. We don't have anything special, but we have the way instructed directly. So, but then individually, all this journey is ourselves. This is how we perceive the world. If everybody, this is how I believe. If everybody perceives the world as God said, we are, but by nature we are united, because we feel emotions towards each other when we see the oneness. So this is like we are in this. This is how I perceive it. There's a tension all over the world, and it's based by ideology, based by religious, and this is like confronting, and you don't see any end. But this is among ourselves, secular and all diversion of religious. We don't have actually Yadut. What is Yadut? There's so many ways, and people look at each other as strangers, and we don't see it.
This is exactly correct. This is beautiful. So you're saying very well, and it's the beginning of the conversation. We have to go more and more and deeper and learn the method, but what you're saying is exactly right. It says in the Torah that that the Jews are not a nation like everybody else. The Jews were a bunch of students who came to Abraham to learn this method, and they specifically were a microcosm of all of the different types of people who were in Babylonia, in the great city. This was the biggest city, like New York of today, or like, Paris was, or Moscow, or right. So this is exactly where they were. Like Egypt. Egypt was was a cosmopolitan place, was the biggest city of the world at that time, and so this is the biggest country. Anyway, so that's exactly right. That the Jewish people are not a nation like everybody else. They are everybody who came together, and obviously God made it so that these exact people who came to Abraham would encompass all of the different types of people in the world. And they themselves said, I'm never going to love this guy. He's different than me. I'm saying this and he's saying that. So they said there must be something. Avraham was a very spiritual person. He was able to see very high, and he was able to continue the method of understanding why God would do this and how to build something out of it. And this is exactly what the Torah is for. So you're saying beautifully.
Another thing that you said about hatred of Jew, and Jew create because they are different. They've been hated by Goyim. But then we can look at our enemies, Ishmael, and we see this is like God. We shouldn't fight them out of hatred and revenge. We have to do God's justice, but not out of hatred. Because they are doing wrong and we're doing wrong. And it's inherent. We can't control it. So
we are getting into the weeds here, and this is all very true what you're saying, but we have to clarify what Rav Ashlag says about all these different issues, and so it's a lot of Torah to get through. But the answer is that ultimately everybody is going to have to come together, as different as they are, and the question is, how are we going to get to that place? And so we have to, figure. You have the inside of the Jewish nation and the outside of the Jewish nation. So the inside of the Jewish nation is anybody in the world. This is hard for people to hear, but I went to a great Kabbalist in Borough Park, and I said, there's this rabbi who's teaching people who are not Jewish, and he said, how do you know they're not Jewish? Because the Jewish people were dispersed all over the world. And so when we say Jewish, people who are not Jewish should not be insulted. This means anybody who is attached to this desire to unify everybody and to make peace with everybody and to find godliness in the world is by default a Jewish person. It doesn't sound nice, but what we're saying is that anybody who is Jewish, who's outside, who doesn't think about those things, has the outside of being Jewish, but they don't have the inside of being Jewish. So these are points that are not really worth arguing about because we get confused by them. When we look inside, we won't be confused by it, by terminology. Okay, let's keep going. It's a complicated conversation, but we're getting somewhere, I think. So continuing on with what we're talking about, the question is why can't we sense God? And so the Kabbalists say is that literally the connections between us, this is called the breaking of the vessels, the connections between us are broken, meaning exactly what we're talking about, that nobody has to come outside of who they are, what their identity is. So if a person tells you, I truly, strongly believe this way, we have to let people be who they are. What's broken is our ability to make connections that are healthy between us. And that demands that we come into our boundaries and that each person knows where they belong and who they are, and then we learn how to transcend our differences. This is literally what the process of Torah and mitzvos is for. How do you're Sephardi, I'm Ashkenaz, we have differences, I'm going to remain the way I am, you're going to remain the way you are. How do we make peace above the differences? How do we come into balance? And so you see all the halachot and all these things about how you behave to other people. It's because I have to respect your boundaries and you have to respect my boundaries. And above that, we have to find a connection. What is the connection? We call the connection Hashem. Hashem is the conduit. Hashem is the higher force by which we are able to unite. So they say that in the religious Jewish community, they say that there's three entities in a marriage. There's a man, a woman, and Hashem. That without Hashem bringing together the man and the woman, you really can't bring together these opposites. And so what we mean, when we say Hashem, is we mean Torah and love and the ability to do the method and learn how to rise out of your differences and come together. And that's the process of creation. Okay. One last point. I think we digressed a lot, but I think that within this, the little messy conversation, we're making headway. Okay. So one last thing that I want one last point in the bullet points, and then I want to read a message. It says in the Talmud, everything the Baal Sulam says, everything the great Kabbalist Baal Sulam says, he draws from his proofs from the Gemara, from the Talmud. So it's not that the Talmud doesn't have it in it, it's just that it's very hard to tease out and to bring out the inner meaning of everything. And so one of the things that it says in the Talmud is the sages used to bless people, you should see your Olam Haba, your world to come, in your lifetime. Okay? So this is very strange because we are taught, right, when we go to elementary school, we're taught that you live in this world and you do all these good things, and then you go to some magical place in the sky and you get the reward for all the good things you did. So you come there and you say, I prayed 15 times this month and I want, this and this reward, and that's the way we teach children about what we're talking about, okay? But the Kabbalists come and say, no, of course that's not what it is. The world to come is your internal world that you have not realized yet, that you have not found within yourself yet. So your Olam Haba, your world to come, you should see in your lifetime, which means that and so we say the reward is in the world to come. Why is the reward in the world to come? Because as we elevate, we get more joy from seeing other people happy and less joy from seeing ourselves getting material things for ourselves. So if you are waiting around to get a nicer car because you are keeping kosher, the reward isn't that the rabbis tell you that you're not going to get the reward. You'll get a car in the next world, something like a car in the next world, but you're not going to get the car in this world because that's not the reward. The Alter Rebbe comes and says, the only mitzvah, the only good deed that you do in this world that actually gets you a reward in this world is tzedakah. And the reason is, because we're learning Kabbalah, is because you're helping somebody else. So if you're helping somebody else, the reward is that you get to help even more people and you get to feel the joy of helping other people, and that's the reward. So as we elevate our consciousness, we're not going to be like, oh man, I would have rather gone to, buy myself a new seats for my Corvette, but instead I helped this guy out who couldn't pay his rent. It's not going to be like that. What's going to happen is that we're going to awaken to a desire, and we're going to be living in a degree of consciousness where we get so much joy from helping somebody else, and it's hard for us to fathom that. But listen, if you're living in a community and you literally, all you want to do all day is buy things for other people, guess what? You're living in a community where everybody else wants to buy things for you. So you think, oh no, it means I'm not going to have the Ferrari, I'm not going to have these nice things. No, everybody's going to have everything. But we're going to have something even greater than that, which is you're not going to be worried about yourself. You're not going to be worried about your honor because you're going to live in a place where everybody's busy with your honor. And you're going to be busy with everybody else's honor. And so this is the height. It makes logical sense, right? This is where we're trying to get to, where people actually believe, they awaken to the belief that they can actually care about everybody else, and it would be better for everybody than if they only care about themselves. What happens in this world? I care about you a little bit, and then you disappoint me, and then forget about it. Right? And so this is why it takes a long time, and why the Torah tells you, live in a community where you can work with people who want to also do like you. If you are giving to people and they want to take from you, you're going to end up with no money in your bank in 2 weeks, and that'll be it, and you'll be angry and frustrated. So that's why we have to find like-minded people who want to do this work, okay?
You don't have to get it in this life, isn't it? If you are not selfish and you give away and you're altruist and you follow the way and you don't get the benefit, like everything is ruined and you don't have any special gift, but then you have a chance to get the next life. Somebody
here is asking that what happens if you do all this stuff and you don't feel the joy and you don't feel the light and you don't end up in a community where everybody is giving. So this is what happens over many the course of 6,000 years of development, okay? And so there's a lot of things. These are called discernments in Kabbalah. That each one of these things you have to look at over and over and over again within yourself and try to understand. And so first thing is most of the time, all the time, it says in the Gemara that a person couldn't move his pinky if he didn't have a self-interest. The person would not be able to move at all. If they weren't secretly motivated by helping themselves, we wouldn't be able to move, okay? So a person has to continually look at themselves and say, why am I giving? Why am I giving to these people? Well, a lot of people give because they want something in return. So this is the first stage of giving, is where you give, but you don't really want to give. It's called giving to get something. And so it's very, very hard. It takes many, many years. And you're right. We come back in many, many life cycles. But the truth of the matter is that if somebody did really become a righteous person and they really did want to give to everybody else, they would feel a tremendous reward inside. And that reward is called devekud, adhesion with the Creator. They would feel Hashem. And that's why when we go to great Sadikim, we see that they know the future and they understand, they have deep insights. Why is that? Because they are higher up the mountain. They are higher up the ladder of consciousness. They see more and they feel more and they're closer to God.
And they're not afraid of losing.
They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the more they give, the better they feel. The closer they are to God, the more they feel like God. And then they do feel bad. You know what they feel bad about? That other people don't have. And people don't understand. And so you can see these Sadikim, you see these, we have all over Israel, these great righteous people, and you see them, they sit there all day, and people come all day long and speak to them and ask them questions and want a blessing from them. What's going on? So these people, all they want to do is give. It's called an overflowing cup in Torah, that the person becomes a righteous person, like the Baba Sali, became an overflowing cup of giving. He just wants, his desire is that he feels that everybody is inside of him. That this is all him. Everybody in the world is part of him, and until everybody is connected, they're never going to feel this, and they're not going to understand this, they're not going to live it. And so his whole desire is for everybody else to have things. It's like if you have a family with 10 kids, you're not thinking about your own car anymore. You're thinking about all the kids have to have cars. So what happened? You have a bigger desire. You used to desire one car, now you desire 10 cars. So who's losing? You're winning, because you have now 10 cars, because when your kid comes up with the car, you're going to be happy. So how'd that happen? You don't have the car, now all your kids have cars. So that's exactly what's going to happen. Bigger, greater, and greater circles. So we have these things. In Kabbalah, they tell you there's always something you can find in the world to give an example of what we're talking about. So you know what it feels like when you just want to give to people who you love. You know what it feels like when they get, you get.
Yeah, but I'm talking...
So we have to feel
him.
So the Torah tells us, so this is something that we have to discuss. And so there's two parts. There's inside out and outside up. So this is something that it's a whole nother class, but there's no Hashem, no revelation of God without loving people, and there's no loving people without Hashem. They both are dependent on one another. They're both literally the same thing. We say in Kagavna, oneness mirroring oneness. Everything is Hashem and everything is everybody else, because you need everybody else to find Hashem. Okay, beautiful. I hope this class made sense. I'm going to read a message. I wrote a message. I go off in tangents and we have questions. So I wrote a message because I feel that it's a time of war and that we should be speaking to the world in a very direct way. And so I wrote out this little message, and I want to just read it verbatim off the page so that I don't go off in tangents. Okay, so I call this a message to our friends and enemies. The Jews are back in the land of Israel. We are learning Torah on a scale greater than ever. We are practicing the exterior rituals and attaching them to the interior method called Kabbalah or Hasidus. This work is being done by all Israelis, regardless of what you see on the outside. We're not talking about religious people doing something and non-religious people not doing. That's not how the world actually exists. We are all one vessel. We are all connected. So I'm talking about now the entire nation of Israel, whether they're in the army or whether they're sitting and learning in yeshiva, okay? We're all learning how to rise out of our egos and unite above our differences. This is the secret of the Torah and the goal of creation. We are doing the hard work. Often we make mistakes and we fall. But we share the benefits with everybody because we understand that the entire world is connected. We invite everybody to join in their own way and with their own unique gifts. When done properly, the Torah turns a person into a giver, and we pledge to share all of this unity to those who choose to transcend evil and unite above their differences. We are all confused, but we have to search inside and rise above the confusion by calling out to God, the higher force, the light that reforms, to pull us out of darkness. According to Judaism, the temple is not only in Jerusalem, but is in our hearts. The temple is for everybody, for all of humanity, to unite as one in one communal soul, in balance with everything. In the time of Solomon, all the nations of the world came to Jerusalem to have their sacrifices offered to the highest unity of God. All this might sound crazy, but look around and see what's happening. If I said this 6 months ago, I would be embarrassed to say this online to the whole world, but now we see that everything's collapsing. The world is changing, and the old systems are collapsing. We must put the words and the meanings of the religious sages, of the Jewish sages, into understandable, actionable terms. The father of the Jewish people is Yaakov, also known as Yisrael, as Israel. This is the middle line in Kabbalah called Tiferet, the line that seeks to balance and unite everyone and everything, regardless of their differences. This happens in concentric circles, starting with those who understand and agree. We cannot allow those who want to move forward with coercion, hate, and blind materialism to control the gates of Jerusalem and the gates to our hearts. To all those listening, look and see the unity in Israel now. Look at the videos online, religious Jews and secular Jews dancing, Eastern Jews and Western Jews singing together, conservative and liberals coming together to support the soldiers and the Torah scholars. Look deeper and see the Muslims and the Bedouins and the Christians and others who are with us. Let your heart search and see that the nation of Israel lives. That's it. That's what I got today.